Tonight, we're going to explore a profound teaching in the Buddhist tradition, impermanence. It's essentially a teaching about change and our human tendency to resist it. We spend so much of our lives trying to freeze the present moment or fighting with the way things are. But peace usually arrives the exact moment we stop trying to control everything and just allow life to move as it does. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The Buddha once said that all things are impermanent, and that when we see this clearly, we begin to find freedom. Now, this is not a teaching of sadness. It is, in its own quiet way, a teaching of great joy. Because when we release our grip on how things should be, we discover how beautiful they already are, just as they are, right now. So settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing find its own easy rhythm. And when you are ready, we will begin our journey together on what it means to let life flow. There is an old saying in the Zen tradition: water never asks where it is going. It simply flows. It moves around stones. It settles into valleys. It finds its way without effort, without argument, without worry. And in this, the ancient teachers tell us, water is our greatest instructor. Because the life that moves through you right now, the breath in your lungs, the feelings rising and falling in your chest, the thoughts drifting across your mind like clouds, all of it is flowing. All of it is moving. And the invitation, the gentle invitation at the heart of Buddhist teaching, is not to stop that flow. It is to rest within it. The Buddha spoke of this often. He said that everything we experience is like a river. Our sensations are a river. Our feelings are a river. Our thoughts, our perceptions, even the sense of who we are, all of it is moving, changing, flowing onward. And he said this not to frighten us, but to free us. Because when we truly understand that we are part of a living, breathing river, we can finally stop clinging to the banks and let ourselves be carried. Tonight, we begin here, with the river, and with a single drop of water. Let us explore a story about a Zen master who, late in his life, traveled to see a great waterfall in the mountains. He had heard of this waterfall for many years. Students had described it to him. Travelers had spoken of its power. And so one autumn, when the leaves were beginning to turn and the air carried just the first hint of coolness, he made the journey. It was not a short one. The path wound upward through dense forest, through groves of old trees whose branches filtered the light into soft golden patterns on the ground. The sound of the water reached him long before he could see it. And then, there it was. The waterfall was enormous. Hundreds and hundreds of feet of water falling from the cliff above, pouring down in a great white curtain against the dark stone. The sound was like nothing else. Not quite thunder, not quite wind. Something deeper. Something that you felt in your chest as much as you heard with your ears. The mist rose from the base and drifted through the trees, catching the light, making small rainbows that appeared and vanished and appeared again. The Zen master stood quietly for a long time, just watching. From where he stood, the waterfall looked like a single thing. One great sheet of water, smooth and unbroken, falling as a whole, like a curtain of white silk hung from the top of the mountain. Beautiful, continuous. One. But then he walked closer, and as he did, something changed. The closer he came, the more he could see that the curtain was not a curtain at all. It was made of individual drops. Thousands upon thousands of tiny, separate drops of water, each one falling on its own, each one catching the light in its own way, each one making its own small journey from the top of the cliff to the pool below. He stood in the mist and watched these drops, and a thought came to him, gently, the way thoughts do when the mind is quiet. "What a difficult thing it must be," he said softly, "for each little drop." A student who had accompanied him on the walk looked up. "What do you mean, teacher?" The master gestured toward the waterfall. "Just a moment ago, that drop was part of the river above. It was flowing, along with all the other water, surrounded, held, connected. And then it reached the edge. And now it is falling, all by itself, through the open air. Separate. Alone. A long, long way down." The student watched the water falling and said nothing for a while. Then the master smiled. "Does that not feel familiar?" Perhaps it does feel familiar. Perhaps you know something of what it is like to feel like a single drop falling through open air. There are times in life when we feel deeply connected, held, part of something larger. And there are other times when we feel as though we have come loose from all of that. When we feel small and separate and on our own. When the world feels very large and we feel very tiny within it. The Buddhist teachings have a beautiful word for this feeling. They call it the illusion of separation. Because you see, the Zen master did not stop with the image of the falling drop. He went further. "But look," he said to his student, "watch what happens when the drop reaches the bottom." They both looked. The drops fell, one after another, hundreds of feet through the air, turning and catching the light. And then, at the base, each one met the pool below. There was a soft sound, a gentle merging, and the drop was no longer a drop. It was water again, part of the stream, part of the river, flowing onward. "You see?" the master said quietly. "It was never really separate. Even while it was falling, it was still water. It was still part of the whole. It only felt alone." He paused, and then he added something that his students would remember for a long time. Whether it is separated into drops or not, water is water. And life, whether it feels broken into pieces or whole, is still life. When we understand this, truly understand it, we do not need to be afraid. We can even enjoy the falling. This is the first gentle teaching the Buddha offers us about change. That we are not separate from the flow of life, even when it feels that way. Even in the moments when we feel most alone, most adrift, most uncertain, we are still part of the river. We are still held. And there is something else in this story, something even more tender. Notice that the Zen master did not say, "You should not feel afraid." He did not say, "Stop being a drop and become the river." He simply said, "When you understand what you truly are, you can even enjoy the falling." That is a very different kind of teaching from what we often hear. We are so often told to fix ourselves, to overcome our fear, to push past our sadness, to arrive somewhere better than where we are. But this old Zen master, standing in the midst of a great waterfall, offered something else entirely. He offered the possibility that right here, in the middle of the fall, in the middle of the change, in the middle of the not knowing, there is a kind of peace available. Not because the falling stops, But because we remember what we are made of, think about your own life for a moment. Think about the changes that have already carried you here, to this very night, to this very breath. There were seasons you did not expect. There were turns in the path you could not have predicted. And yet, here you are. The river carried you. It always has. Even when you could not see where it was going. Even when it felt like falling. There is a line from the ancient Buddhist texts, from a teaching called the Diamond Sutra, that says it so simply. Thus shall you think of this fleeting world. A star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. These are not words of sadness. Listen to them again, gently. A star at dawn, a bubble in a stream. These are some of the most beautiful things in the world. Brief, yes. Passing, yes. But luminous. Precious beyond measure. And what makes them precious is the very fact that they do not last. The star at dawn is beautiful because the sky is about to change. The bubble catches the light for just a moment and then is gone. And in that moment, it is perfect. This is the gift hidden inside the teaching of change. That impermanence is not the enemy of beauty. It is the very thing that makes beauty possible. A poet once wrote a small prayer that captures this feeling perfectly. It goes like this. Little breath, breathe me gently. Row me gently, for I am a river. I am learning to cross. Let those words settle for a moment. Little breath, breathe me gently. There is such tenderness in that. Such willingness to be carried. The poet is not asking to control the river, or to stop it, or to know where it is going. The poet is simply asking to be breathed, to be moved, to be part of the crossing. And this is what happens when you sit quietly and pay attention to your own breathing. You begin to notice something remarkable. You are not really doing the breathing. Oh, it feels that way at first. It feels as though you are the one deciding to inhale and exhale, the one in charge of the whole operation. But if you sit with it long enough, if you let your attention soften and simply watch, you notice that the breath is breathing itself. It comes in on its own. It goes out on its own. It has been doing this since the moment you were born, without you needing to think about it even once. And when you notice this, something begins to shift. You start to feel that your breathing is not just your own. It is part of something much larger. The trees outside your window are breathing too, in their own slow way, drawing in what you breathe out, offering back what you need. The ocean breathes, rising and falling with the tides. The seasons breathe, expanding into summer and contracting into winter and expanding again. Even the earth itself, the ancient teachers would say, has a rhythm, a pulse, a kind of breathing that has been going on for longer than we can imagine. And you are part of it. Right now, in this breath, you are woven into the breathing of the whole living world. The Buddha described this beautifully. He said that what we call a person is really a meeting place of rivers. Rivers of sensation, rivers of feeling, rivers of thought, rivers of perception, all flowing through us, all changing, all moving. And that when we sit quietly and notice this, we begin to see that we are not a solid, fixed, separate thing at all. We are a process. We are a flowing. We are the river, pretending for a little while to be a drop. There is a practice in the Buddhist tradition that is very simple and very old. It is called mindfulness of breathing, and it asks nothing more of you than this: to sit and to feel your breath and to let everything else be as it is. You do not need to breathe in any special way. You do not need to slow your breathing down or deepen it or count it. You simply notice it. The cool air entering your nostrils, the gentle rise of your chest or your belly, the soft release as the breath leaves you. And then the next one comes, all on its own, without you needing to fetch it. And as you rest here, breathing, you might begin to feel what the Zen master felt at the waterfall, that you are not separate from life, that you are not a small, isolated drop falling through empty space. You are water. You have always been water, and the river has never, not for a single moment, let you go. If a thought arises while you rest here, let it come. Let it float across the surface of your mind like a leaf on a pond, and then let it drift away. You do not need to chase it. You do not need to push it under. Just let it be and return gently to the breath. Another thought will come. That is perfectly fine. That is what minds do. They produce thoughts the way rivers produce ripples. It is their nature. And your nature, the deeper nature beneath all those ripples, is something much more still. In the Zen tradition, they sometimes say that meditation is not about stopping your thoughts. It is about discovering the sky behind the clouds. The clouds are always moving, always changing shape, sometimes dark, sometimes light. But the sky itself is always there, vast, open, unmoved, and you are the sky. This is the heart of tonight's teaching. That change is not something happening to you. It is something happening through you. And the peace you are looking for is not waiting at the end of the fall. It is here, now, in the falling itself, in the breath itself, in the soft, continuous flow of this one precious life. The old teachers called this finding your composure in change. Not fighting it, not running from it, not pretending it is not happening, but resting in it the way a leaf rests on the surface of a stream, carried gently, held completely, going where the water goes. And so perhaps, as you rest here tonight, you can let yourself be the leaf. You can let yourself be the drop. You can let the river carry you, knowing that it always has, knowing that it always will. You are held by something much larger than your worries, much older than your plans, much wiser than your busy thinking mind. You are held by life itself. And life, as the Buddha gently reminds us, is always flowing, always finding its way. Let us pause for a moment here. Notice how you are feeling. Notice the breath moving in your body, soft and steady, all on its own. There is nowhere you need to be but here. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Imagine a warm evening somewhere in the forests of Southeast Asia, a long time ago. The air is soft and still. Insects are singing in the trees. A small group of students are sitting on the wooden floor of an open-air hut, and their teacher, an old monk with a weathered face and very bright eyes, is pouring tea. He pours slowly, the way people do when they are not in a hurry. The tea is simple. The cups are simple. But in his hands there is one cup that is different from the others. It is old. It is finely made, with a pale blue glaze that catches the lamplight. Someone had given it to him as a gift years ago, and he loved it. He drank from it every day. One of the students noticed the cup and said, "Teacher, that is a beautiful cup." The old monk held it up and turned it gently in the lamplight. "It is," he said. "I am very fond of it. Are you not afraid of breaking it?" The student asked. "It looks so delicate." The monk smiled, and then he said something that none of them would ever forget. "For me," he said, "this cup is already broken." The students looked at one another. The cup was right there in his hand, perfectly whole. "I know," the monk continued, "that one day I might place it on the edge of the table and my elbow will knock it off. Or someone will come to tidy the room and it will slip from their hands. Or perhaps a storm will come and the roof will leak and the shelf will warp and the cup will fall. Someday it will break. This I know for certain." He paused and took a sip of tea, unhurried. "And because I know this," he said, "I do not hold it with fear. I hold it with love. I drink from it. I admire the way the light moves across the glaze. I enjoy it completely, today, right now, in this moment. And when the day comes that it breaks, I will not say, 'How terrible.' I will say, 'Yes, of course. It was always going to.'" He set the cup down gently on the floor beside him. "You see," he said, "the cup is already broken. And that is exactly why it is so precious." There is something in this little story that goes against almost everything we are taught about how to live. We spend so much of our time trying to make things permanent, trying to hold things in place. We find something good, a friendship, a home, a season of life that feels just right, and our first instinct is to grip it tightly, to say, "Stay. Please stay exactly as you are. Do not change. Do not leave." And yet, everything we have ever loved has changed. Everything we have ever held has shifted shape. Not because life is cruel, but because life is alive. And living things move. The old forest monk was not telling his students to stop caring about the cup. He was not saying, "Nothing matters, so why bother?" That would be a cold teaching, and that was not a cold man. What he was saying was something much warmer, much more tender. He was saying, "Love what you have. Love it fully. But love it the way you love a sunset, not by trying to freeze it in the sky, but by giving it your complete attention while it is here." This is one of the most freeing things the Buddhist tradition has to offer. The understanding that letting go and loving deeply are not opposites. They are the same thing. When you stop gripping, your hands open. And open hands can hold so much more than clenched fists ever could. Let us explore a small story about this. There was once a traveler who came to visit a wise old woman who lived at the edge of a village. The traveler had heard that she was the happiest person anyone had ever met, and he wanted to know her secret. When he arrived, he found her sitting in a small garden. It was nothing grand. A few flowers, a low wooden fence, a view of the hills. She was drinking tea and watching the sky change color as the sun moved behind the clouds. "I have come a long way to ask you something," the traveler said. "People say you are the happiest person in this province. What is your secret?" The old woman thought for a moment. Then she held up her teacup, much the way our forest monk held up his. "Do you see this cup?" She said, "Yes, I love this cup, but I do not ask it to be here tomorrow. I do not ask the tea to stay warm. I do not ask the sun to stop moving behind those clouds. I just drink the tea while it is warm. I sit in the sun while it shines. And when the clouds come, I enjoy the clouds. The traveler frowned. But is that not sad? Knowing it will all change. The old woman smiled. It would be sad, she said, if I spent the whole time wishing it would stay. But I do not. So I am free to enjoy it. She poured him a cup of tea. Here, she said, drink this while it is still warm. That is the teaching in its simplest form. Drink the tea while it is warm. Watch the sunset while it is here. Love what you love, fully, without asking it to promise you forever. The monk had a favorite phrase that he repeated so often it became almost a greeting among his students. In his language, the phrase was just two small words. Translated, they mean something like, uncertain, is it not? He said it about everything. A student would come to him worried about the future. Uncertain, is it not? A student would come to him overjoyed about some success. Uncertain, is it not? The weather would change. The food would be good one day and plain the next. A plan would work out or it would not. And always, with that same quiet smile, uncertain, is it not? At first, his students found this a little frustrating. They wanted answers. They wanted to know what to do, how to prepare, how to get it right. But slowly, over time, they began to understand what he was really offering them. He was offering them rest. Because think about it. How much of your worry comes from the belief that you are supposed to know what is going to happen? How much of your tension comes from trying to predict, to control, to make sure that tomorrow looks the way you want it to? And what if you simply allowed yourself to say, gently, I do not know. I do not know what will happen. And that is all right. The monk would sometimes laugh after saying it, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Uncertain, he would say. So relax. That, so relax, is the part most people miss. Uncertainty is not an invitation to panic. It is an invitation to soften, to let the shoulders drop, to stop carrying the weight of a future that has not arrived yet and may never arrive in the form you expect. You can try this right now, very gently. Think of something you have been worrying about, something you have been turning over and over in your mind, trying to figure out, trying to control. And now, just for this moment, set it down. You do not have to solve it tonight. You do not have to know how it will turn out. You can simply say, softly, uncertain, and feel the relief in that. Feel the breath come a little easier. Feel the space that opens up when you stop demanding that the future reveal itself before it is ready. The monk understood that this was not laziness or carelessness. It was trust. A deep, quiet trust in the unfolding of things. The kind of trust that allows a seed to rest in the dark earth without panic, knowing that the right season will come. There is a beautiful old saying, attributed to a writer from another tradition, that goes like this: there are 3 rules for living a good life. Unfortunately, nobody knows what they are. It is a joke, of course. But like many good jokes, it rests on something true. We do not know the rules. We never have. We feel our way forward, day by day, moment by moment, the way a person reads Braille, with the fingertips, slowly, feeling each small bump and curve before understanding the word. And this too is a kind of freedom, Because if you do not need to know the whole path, then you only need to know the next step. And the next step is usually quite simple. It is usually just this: be here. Pay attention. See what is in front of you. Respond with as much kindness as you can. The Buddha himself spoke of this simplicity. He said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment, not because the past and future do not matter, but because the present moment is the only place where your life is actually happening. It is the only cup you can drink from, and it is here, right now, in your hands. And when you walk through life this way, one step at a time, feeling your way, something interesting begins to happen. You start to notice things you would have missed if you were rushing ahead to the next destination. The quality of the light in the room, the sound of rain beginning on the roof, the way someone's face softens when they feel truly heard. These small, quiet things turn out to be the richest part of being alive, and they are available to you in any moment you choose to pay attention. The old teachings call this waking up, not to something new, but to what has been here all along. You might notice, as you listen to all this, that the teaching of the broken cup is really the same teaching as the river and the drop, just seen from a different angle. The river teaches us that everything flows. The cup teaches us that everything will one day return to the earth. And both of them, gently, kindly, are saying the same thing. You do not need to hold on so tightly. You can open your hands. You can soften your grip. And when you do, you will find that you have not lost anything at all. You have gained the freedom to truly enjoy what is here. There is a poem in the Zen tradition that says, "Sitting quietly, doing nothing. Spring comes, and the grass grows by itself." It is such a gentle image. You do not make the spring come. You do not force the grass to grow. You simply sit and allow and trust that life knows what it is doing. And it does. It always has. The old monk in the forest knew this. That is why he could hold his beautiful cup with such ease, such grace. He was not pretending that it would last forever. He was not telling himself a comforting story about permanence. He was simply present. Here, now, with this cup, with this tea, with this lamplight, with these students, with this breath. And because he was fully present, the moment was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. Think of the people you have known who seem to carry this kind of ease. Perhaps a grandparent who could sit on the porch for hours, perfectly content, watching the light move across the garden. Perhaps a child, completely absorbed in the pattern a stick makes as it drags through sand. They are not doing anything extraordinary. They are simply allowing themselves to be fully in the moment they have been given. And there is something luminous about them when they do. The Buddha had a word for this quality. He called it composure. Not stiffness, not control, but a kind of settled, open calm. The way a mountain sits in the changing weather. Rain comes, and the mountain does not flinch. Sun comes, and the mountain does not chase it. The mountain simply abides, present, steady, at ease with whatever the sky brings. And that is perhaps the deepest teaching hidden in this story. That when we stop asking the moment to be more than it is, when we stop asking it to last longer, to promise us something, to guarantee the future, we discover that the moment itself is astonishingly full, rich beyond measure, a whole world in a cup of tea. So as you rest here now, you might let your own hand soften a little. Whatever you have been holding on to today, whatever you have been gripping, you can set it down for a while. It will still be there in the morning if you need it. But right now, in this gentle space between waking and sleep, you can let it go. You can be like the old monk, sitting in the lamplight, drinking tea, smiling at the beautiful, impermanent world. The cup is already broken, and that is exactly why this moment is so sweet. Let us rest here for a breath or two. Feel yourself right where you are. There is nothing to hold, nothing to solve, just this soft, easy moment. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Have you ever arrived somewhere only to find it closed? Not just a shop or a restaurant, but something you had set your heart on. Something you had traveled toward, planned for, imagined in detail. And then you got there, and the gate was shut. The sign said no. And that feeling came, the one that sinks right through the middle of you. All that way, for nothing. It is such a common feeling, and it is the place where many of us stop. We turn around. We go home. We tell ourselves the story of the wasted trip. But the Buddhist teachers say something curious about moments like these. They say that the closed gate is not always what it appears to be. That sometimes what looks like an ending is really just the first few steps of a longer, more surprising path. And that the people who discover this are not the ones who push harder or demand louder. They are the ones who stay and walk a little further and remain open to what might be around the next corner. There is a Zen saying that goes, "The obstacle is the path." Not that the obstacle is in the way of the path. The obstacle itself is the path. And the gate being closed, the plan falling apart, the thing you wanted being unavailable, that is not a detour. It is exactly where the teaching begins. Let us explore a story about this. Two friends had planned a trip together. They had heard about a famous garden in a far-off province, a place known for its ancient trees and rare plants, a place people traveled from many regions to see. And so they set out early one weekend morning, driving for hours through the countryside, past farms and small towns and fields of wildflowers, talking and laughing, looking forward to the day ahead. When they arrived, the garden was more beautiful than they had imagined, at least from the outside. There was a magnificent gate, very tall, carved from dark wood, with characters inscribed along the top. And beside the gate, a high wall made of stone and decorated tile, stretching away in both directions, painted and ornate, easily as tall as 3 people standing on one another's shoulders. And on the gate, a simple sign, "Closed." One of the friends immediately became upset. "We should have checked," he said. "We drove all this way. What a waste. This was our only weekend." But his companion did not say anything for a while. She stood quietly, looking at the wall, breathing. And then, without explaining herself, she began to walk. Not away from the garden, along it. She turned left and started following the high decorated wall, stepping over roots and mossy stones, trailing one hand lightly along the tiles as she went. Her friend watched for a moment, confused. "Where are you going?" he called. "It is closed." "I know," she said, not turning around. "I am just going to walk." And so he followed her, reluctantly at first, still holding on to his frustration. They walked in silence for a few minutes, the wall stretching on beside them, tall and solid and covered in beautiful old tiles. He was composing complaints in his head. He was making a case for why the day was ruined. And then something unexpected happened. After perhaps a few hundred yards, the wall simply stopped. It did not end at a corner or turn into a fence. It just stopped. Because it was only a facade. The entire grand wall, the one that had seemed so imposing and permanent and impossible to get past, was only a front. Behind it, and beside it, and stretching away in every direction, the garden was completely open. There was no fence. There was no barrier. There had never been one. Only the illusion of one at the entrance. They looked at each other, and then, without a word, they walked right in. The garden was more beautiful than either of them had imagined. Ancient trees with thick, gnarled trunks stood in long rows, their branches curving gracefully overhead like the arms of old friends reaching toward one another. There were paths of smooth stone winding between beds of moss and fern. Small pools reflected the sky. Somewhere, water was trickling softly over rocks, and the light, filtered through so many layers of leaf and branch, had a quality to it that was almost golden, almost like being inside a painting. They walked slowly, not speaking much, just looking. And the friend who had been so upset at the gate, the one who had wanted to turn around and leave, he was the one who eventually stopped in the middle of a mossy path and said, very quietly, "I am so glad we kept walking." His companion smiled. "So am I." And that was all that needed to be said. This story is so simple, and yet there is something in it that the heart recognizes immediately. How many of the walls in our lives are like this? How many of the things that seem solid and permanent and impossible to get past are really just facades? Just the first few feet of a barrier that, if we stay present, if we keep walking, simply dissolves into open space. The Buddha taught that most of our suffering comes not from the situation itself, but from the story we tell ourselves about the situation. We drove all this way. What a waste. That is not a fact. That is a story. And it is a story that closes the door before we have walked far enough to see whether the door is really there. The friend who kept walking did something very quiet and very powerful. She did not argue with the closed gate. She did not try to force it open. She did not collapse into disappointment. She simply stayed present and moved and remained curious. She let life lead her instead of demanding that life follow her plan. And the garden opened to her. There is an old Buddhist teaching that compares the mind to a fist. When the fist is clenched, the fingers are tight, the knuckles white, and nothing can get in or out. But when the fist opens, gently, slowly, the hand becomes a bowl, and a bowl can receive things: rain, seeds, sunlight, the hand of another person. All of these are available, but only when the grip releases. The same is true of the mind. When we clench around our plans, our expectations, our ideas about how things are supposed to go, we become a fist. Tight, closed, unable to receive whatever the moment is actually offering. But when we soften, when we let the plan be what it is and stay open to what might come instead, the mind becomes a bowl. And life, which is endlessly generous, begins to fill it with things we never thought to ask for. There is another story that belongs here, from a different tradition but carrying the same quiet truth. In a small village, long ago, there lived an old teacher. He was deeply loved by his students, not because he was dramatic or powerful, but because he was kind, and because he listened well, and because his teachings were simple enough for anyone to hold. Every week, his students would gather in his home, and he would teach them. And at the end of every lesson, he would say the same thing: "Now place these words upon your heart." For many years, this went on, and the students were faithful. They memorized the teachings. They contemplated them. They carried them with them through their days. But always, the old teacher said the same curious phrase: "Not put them in your heart, but place them on your heart." One day, a young student finally asked the question that many of them had been wondering about. "Teacher," she said, "why do you always say on the heart? Why not in the heart? Surely the teachings belong inside." The old teacher looked at her with great tenderness. He was quiet for a long moment. "Because," he said, "only life can put the teachings inside your heart. I cannot do it. You cannot do it by effort alone. What we can do is place them gently on the surface. And then we wait." "Wait for what?" the student asked. "For the moment when the heart opens," he said. "And it will open. Hearts do. Sometimes from joy, sometimes from sorrow, sometimes from the simple, ordinary surprise of being alive. And when it opens, even just a crack, the teachings that have been resting on the surface will fall in. And then they will be yours. Not because you memorized them, but because you lived them." The room was very quiet after he said this. The students sat with it. Some of them looked down at their hands. Some of them looked at the old teacher's face, which was calm and patient, the face of someone who had placed many things on his own heart over a long life, and waited and been surprised by what fell in. And perhaps you have experienced this too, even without knowing it had a name. You hear something, a line from a book, a word from a friend, a phrase spoken by a stranger, and in the moment you hear it, it is just words. Nice words, maybe. Interesting words, but just words. And then, weeks later, or months later, or sometimes years later, something happens in your life. Something shifts. Something opens. And suddenly that line, that word, that phrase, lights up inside you like a lantern. You understand it now. Not with your mind, but with your whole being. It fell in. That is what the old teacher meant. And that is why he never hurried. He knew the heart has its own timing, and it cannot be rushed. This is perhaps the most comforting teaching of all for those of us who feel that we are not doing it right, that we are not spiritual enough, or wise enough, or disciplined enough, that we should be further along by now, whatever further along means. The old teacher is saying something wonderfully forgiving. You do not need to force the door. You do not need to push the teachings into your heart by willpower. You just need to keep showing up. Keep placing the words gently on the surface. Keep walking along the wall. And trust that the opening will come. Because it will. It always does. The garden was open all along. The heart will crack in its own time. And when it does, everything you have been carrying, every gentle word, every quiet teaching, every story that made you pause for just a moment, will fall in like rain falling into the earth. Softly, naturally, without force. And here, once again, we find the thread that runs through tonight's journey. The river flows without being told where to go. The cup does not need to last forever to be beautiful. And the garden does not need the gate to be open, because the gate was never really the only way in. Life is always wider, more generous, more open than the narrow entrance we fixate upon. There is always another way around. There is always more space than we think. The Buddha said, "When conditions are sufficient, things manifest." This is not a teaching about effort. It is a teaching about patience, about trust, about letting the seasons do their work. The seed does not struggle to become a tree. It simply rests in good soil and waits for the rain. And in its own time, it becomes what it was always going to become. You might think of your own life right now. Whatever closed gates you are facing, whatever plans have not unfolded the way you hoped, whatever walls seem tall and solid and impossible, you do not have to break them down. You do not have to climb them. You can simply start walking. Stay present. Stay gentle. Stay curious. And see what opens. Perhaps you can do this tonight. Perhaps you can stop trying so hard. Stop gripping so tightly. Stop demanding that the gate open on your schedule. And instead, simply walk. Simply breathe. Simply rest. And trust that the garden is there, just around the bend, waiting for you, open and green and full of things you have not yet imagined. Let us pause gently here. There is no rush. The garden is not going anywhere. Just notice this moment, this quiet breath, this feeling of being held in something larger than yourself. And when you are ready, we will continue on together. Sometimes a single word, spoken by the right person at the right time, can change the way you see everything. Not a long speech, not a book full of philosophy. Just one word, offered simply, like a stone dropped into still water. And the ripples move outward from there, quietly, for a very long time. The word we are going to spend some time with now is this: wonderful. Let us explore a story about a woman who worked in the kitchen of a very large building. It was not a glamorous place. The kitchen was deep in the lower floors, away from the windows, lit by the flat white light of overhead lamps. The work was steady and hard. Preparing meals, cleaning, carrying heavy things from one end of the room to the other. She had been doing this kind of work for more than 20 years. She was small, and she was strong, and she was no longer young. Life had asked a great deal of her over the years. She was raising her grandchildren on her own, several of them, and her days were long. She arrived early. She left late. And in between, she worked without complaint in that warm, steamy kitchen where most people in the building never thought to visit. But there was someone who did visit. A woman who worked upstairs, whose job sometimes brought her down to the lower floors. And over time, these two women became friendly. They would stop and talk for a moment when their paths crossed. Nothing long. Just a greeting, a quick exchange, a smile. And every time the woman from upstairs asked, "How are you doing today?" the kitchen worker would answer the same way. She would not say fine. She would not say okay. She would not say not bad or hanging in there or any of the dozen small phrases we use to say almost nothing at all. She would turn her face upward and her eyes would brighten, and she would say, with complete sincerity, "Wonderful." The first time she said it, the woman from upstairs almost laughed. It seemed so unlikely. Here was a person doing difficult work, in a difficult place, carrying the weight of a full and demanding life. And she was saying wonderful, not as a joke, not as sarcasm. She meant it. And the more the woman from upstairs visited, the more she realized that this was not a performance. It was not a mask. It was the truest thing about her. Something in this woman had found a way to be genuinely, quietly delighted by the simple fact of being alive. The steam rising from the pots, the sound of voices in the hallway, the feeling of her own two hands doing honest work. Wonderful. Over time, that single word became like a bell for the woman from upstairs. On difficult days, when things felt heavy or complicated or overwhelming, she would think of her friend in the kitchen. She would hear that voice in her mind, clear and warm. Wonderful. And something in her would soften. Something would ease, as if the word itself carried a kind of medicine. This is one of the quiet miracles of being around someone who is truly at peace. It is not that they give you advice. It is not that they solve your problems or take away your burdens. It is that their presence itself becomes a kind of teaching. You feel it in the room with them. Something slows down. Something settles. And without any words being exchanged, you begin to remember something you had forgotten, that it is possible to be at ease. Right here, right now, even in the middle of everything. There is an old saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But sometimes the teacher does not appear on a mountaintop or in a monastery. Sometimes the teacher appears in a kitchen, wearing an apron, with flour on her hands, saying, "Wonderful," to anyone who asks. There is something important hidden in this story, and it is not about pretending that everything is fine when it is not. The kitchen worker was not ignoring the hard parts of her life. She was not wearing a mask of false happiness. She had simply discovered something that the Buddhist teachers have been pointing to for thousands of years, that joy is not something that depends on your circumstances. It is something that lives underneath them. The Buddha once said, "There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path." This is a strange thing to hear at first. We are so used to thinking of happiness as a destination, something we will reach when the right conditions fall into place, when we get the job, when we find the person, when the problem is solved, when the weather changes. And then the thinking goes, then we will be happy. But the kitchen worker knew something different. She knew that if you wait for the conditions to be perfect, you will wait forever. Because conditions are never perfect. They are always shifting, always incomplete, always a mix of things you would choose and things you would not. And happiness, real happiness, is not the absence of difficulty. It is the willingness to be present for all of it. To stand in the kitchen with the steam and the hard work and the long hours, and to notice that you are alive and that this, in itself, is something extraordinary. Wonderful. There is a gentle teaching in the Zen tradition about what it means to wake up in the middle of ordinary life. Not to escape it, not to transcend it, but to suddenly see it clearly, just as it is, and to be astonished by it. Let us explore a story about a monk who had a dream one night. In the dream, he was invited to attend a class at a great school of music. He was very excited. He loved music and the teacher of this class was said to be remarkable. But when he arrived at the classroom and sat down, he learned that every new student was expected to stand and play a musical instrument for the class. His heart sank. He did not play any instrument. He had no flute, no drum, no stringed instrument of any kind. He sat there, watching the other students take their turns. One played a beautiful melody on a wooden flute. Another struck a small drum in a rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat. Another drew a bow across the strings of an instrument that sang like a human voice. Each one was skilled. Each one had something polished and practiced to offer. And with each performance, the monk's unease grew. What could he possibly offer? He had nothing. He had spent his life in silence and stillness, not in music. And then, just as the moment arrived, just as the teacher's eyes turned to him, he remembered something. He reached into the folds of his robe and found, resting there as it always was, a small bell. Just a simple, round bell, the kind he used every day to mark the beginning and end of meditation. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, just a small, clear bell. He stood, walked to the front of the room, and rang it. One clear note. It rose into the air of the classroom, pure and steady, and then, slowly, gently, it faded into silence. And in that silence, something shifted. The room itself seemed to breathe. The other students, who had been waiting, perhaps expecting something grand, found themselves simply listening to the note, and then listening to the silence that followed it. And in that silence, they heard something they had not heard before. They heard the room. They heard themselves. They heard the present moment ringing. That was all. One note, one bell, and it was enough. When he woke from the dream, the monk understood something he had known for a long time, but had perhaps forgotten. That the instrument you need is already with you. You do not need to go out and acquire something special. You do not need years of training or a rare and expensive tool. You already have what you need. It has been with you all along, resting quietly in your pocket, waiting to be remembered. And what is that instrument? It is simply your attention, your awareness, your ability to stop right in the middle of whatever you are doing and notice that you are here. In the tradition this monk came from, they used a bell for exactly this purpose. Throughout the day, at random moments, someone would ring a small bell, and no matter what anyone was doing, cooking or sweeping or talking or reading, they would simply stop, just for a breath or two. They would stand or sit where they were, and they would arrive, fully, completely, right here, right now, not reviewing the past, not rehearsing the future, just here. And what they discovered over and over again is that here is almost always more beautiful than they remembered. That the present moment, when you actually show up for it, is astonishingly rich. The color of the light, the texture of the air, the sound of a bird outside the window that you had not noticed until you stopped. All of it, waiting. All of it, wonderful. The Buddha said, "The secret of health, for both mind and body, is not to mourn for the past, nor to worry about the future, but to live the present moment wisely and earnestly." And living it wisely does not mean living it perfectly. It means living it awake. Think of a time when you were completely absorbed in something simple, Perhaps you were watching the rain fall on a window. Perhaps you were listening to a piece of music that moved you, or sitting with someone you love in comfortable silence, or watching a cat sleep in a patch of sunlight. In those moments, you were not trying to be present. You simply were present, and everything felt, for just a little while, exactly as it should be. Those moments are not accidents. They are glimpses of the way things always are, underneath the noise and rush of our ordinary thinking. The rain is always falling somewhere. The sunlight is always landing on something. The beauty is always here. We just forget to notice. And the bell, whatever form it takes, is simply a way of remembering. You can try this in your own life, gently, without making it into a project. You do not need a bell, though you can use one if you like. You can use anything. The sound of a door closing, the moment you sit down with a cup of tea, the first breath of air when you step outside. Any of these can become your small bell, your reminder to pause and arrive. And when you do pause, even for just a moment, you might find what the kitchen worker found. That the place you are standing is not as ordinary as you thought. That the life you are living, with all its routines and repetitions and small daily tasks, is quietly, stubbornly wonderful. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are here for it. Because you showed up. Because you rang the bell and listened to the note and let it move through you. There is a Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Nothing changes on the outside, but everything changes on the inside. The wood is the same wood. The water is the same water. But you are not the same. You are awake. And the ordinary world, seen through awake eyes, turns out to be the most extraordinary place there is. That is the teaching of the woman in the kitchen. That is the teaching of the monk and his bell. You do not need to go somewhere special to find peace. You do not need to wait for conditions to improve. You can ring your own small bell, right here, right now, and discover that this moment, this breath, this life, is already more than enough. Let us rest here for a moment. Feel the quiet around you. If you like, let this moment be your bell. A single clear note ringing softly, reminding you that you are here. And when you are ready, we will continue together. If you have ever stood at the edge of the ocean, you know the feeling. The wind pulls at your clothes. The waves come in, one after another, some tall, some low, some breaking white across the rocks, some sliding gently up the sand and pulling back again. There is so much movement, so much sound, so much restless, beautiful energy on the surface. But if you have ever put your head beneath the water, even just a few inches, you know that something else is happening too. Below the surface, the noise falls away. The churning calms, and the deeper you go, the stiller it becomes. Down near the floor of the ocean, where the sand is soft and the light is dim and blue, there is a quiet that is hard to describe. Not empty, not lifeless, just very, very still. The storms above are still happening. The waves are still breaking. But down here, they are distant. A gentle swaying, nothing more. The Buddha used this image when he talked about the human mind. He said that awareness, our deepest awareness, is like the depths of the ocean. And the things that happen to us, the pleasures and the pains, the praise and the blame, the things we gain and the things we lose. These are like the weather on the surface. Real, yes. Sometimes beautiful, sometimes rough. But not the whole of who we are. Not even close. There is a way that most of us live, and it is not our fault. It is simply what we are used to. We live on the surface. Something good happens and we rise. A kind word. A success at work. A beautiful morning. We feel wonderful, lifted, expanded. And then something difficult happens and we fall. A criticism. A disappointment. A plan that falls apart. And we feel heavy, contracted, low. Up and down, all day long, all year long, like a small boat on a big sea, tossed this way and that by every wave that comes along. The Buddhist teachers called these the winds of life, and they noticed that they always come in pairs. Pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame. Things going your way and things not going your way. And the crucial thing they noticed is this: no one escapes them. No one. Not the wisest person, not the kindest, not the most successful, not the most humble. Everyone, everywhere, in every time, feels these winds blowing through their life. The question is not whether the winds will blow. They will. They always do. The question is where you stand when they do. Let us explore a small story about this. There was once a young student who came to visit an old teacher in the mountains. The student was frustrated. He said, "Teacher, I have been practicing for a long time now. I have been sitting in meditation. I have been trying to find peace, but my feelings still go up and down. I still feel happy one day and sad the next. I still get rattled by small things. What am I doing wrong?" The old teacher listened patiently. Then she said, "Come with me." She led him to the edge of a lake. It was a windy day, and the surface of the lake was covered in ripples. Small waves lapped against the rocks. Leaves and bits of twig floated on the surface, pushed this way and that. "What do you see?" the teacher asked. "I see a lake," the student said, "but it is disturbed. The wind is moving everything around." "Yes," the teacher said. "Now look deeper. What is below the surface?" The student knelt and peered into the water. Below the ripples, he could see stones on the bottom. He could see the soft, dark mud. He could see the stems of water plants, gently swaying but rooted. And down there, below all the surface movement, the water was calm. "Your feelings are the ripples," the teacher said. "They will always come and go. That is their nature. But you are not the ripples. You are the lake. And the lake, underneath it all, is still." The student thought about this for a moment. "But the ripples feel so real," he said. "When I am angry, I feel like I am the anger. When I am afraid, I feel like I am the fear. How do I remember that I am the lake?" The teacher smiled. "You are remembering right now," she said. "The fact that you can notice the anger, the fact that you can watch the fear, that is the lake seeing its own ripples. You have never been the waves. You have always been what holds them." She picked up a small stone and tossed it gently into the water. A ring of ripples moved outward from where it fell, spreading, widening, and then slowly, slowly dissolving back into stillness. "You see," she said, "the lake always returns to itself." The student sat by the water for a long time after that. He watched the wind come and go. He watched the ripples rise and settle. And slowly, something in him began to understand. Not with his thinking mind, but with something deeper. Something that felt like the bottom of the lake itself. This is not a teaching that asks you to stop feeling. That would be like asking the ocean to stop making waves. It would be unnatural, and it would be unkind. Your feelings are a beautiful, necessary part of being alive. The joy is real. The sadness is real. The frustration, the tenderness, the longing, the delight, all of it is real, and all of it matters. But there is something underneath all of those feelings that is also real. Something that does not rise and fall with every passing mood. Something steady. Something spacious. Something that can hold the joy and the sadness both, without being overwhelmed by either one. The Buddhist teachers called this awareness. Not thinking, not feeling, just the simple, open quality of being conscious. The knowing that is there before you decide whether something is good or bad. The seeing that is there before you form an opinion. Pure, gentle awareness, like the sky behind the weather. And the beautiful thing about this awareness is that you do not have to create it. It is already here. It has always been here. It is the part of you that has been quietly watching everything unfold since the very beginning. The part that noticed your first breath and will notice your last. The part that is not worried, not hurrying, not trying to fix anything. Just present. Just aware. Just still. You have touched this awareness many times, even if you did not call it by name. It is there when you wake in the middle of the night and lie still for a moment, before the thoughts start up, before the worries arrive. In that first instant of waking, there is just awareness, just the soft hum of being alive. No story yet, no judgment, just this. It is there when you stand at a window and watch snow falling, and for a moment you are not thinking about anything at all. You are just watching, just present. And in that moment, there is no problem to solve. There is no self to improve. There is just the snow and the light and the quiet and you. These moments pass quickly, usually. The mind picks up again, the thoughts begin, and we are back on the surface, riding the waves. But the stillness does not go anywhere. It is always there, waiting, patient as the ocean floor, ready to receive you whenever you are ready to sink down into it. There is a moment that sometimes comes on very clear nights, when you step outside and look up at the stars. And for just an instant, the ordinary world falls away, and you feel something vast. Not frightening, not lonely, just vast. You feel the immensity of the sky above you, and the slow turning of the earth beneath your feet, and the quiet fact that you are a small, warm, breathing creature on the surface of a world that is itself floating through an endless sea of light. There is a story about a person who once had the chance to look through a very powerful telescope on a clear night. And through the lens, they could see the face of our nearest star in extraordinary detail. They could see the surface shimmering. They could see the faint markings of distant features. And then they noticed something small, a tiny circle, barely visible, slowly moving across the face of that great light. It was a planet, one of the small worlds that circles the star, just as our world does. And in that moment, looking at this tiny dot against the enormity of the star, something shifted inside them. They could feel, not just think, but feel, that we too are on one of those small worlds. That we too are circling a star. That this whole life, all of it, every worry and every wonder, is happening on a small, warm world adrift in an ocean of space. And instead of feeling small, they felt held, as if the vastness itself were a kind of embrace, as if being tiny in such an immense universe was not a problem but a gift, a reason to pay attention, a reason to be gentle, a reason to love this brief, beautiful life with everything you have. The Buddha said, in the end, only 3 things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. And perhaps that is easiest to remember on nights like these, when the sky is wide and the stars are clear, and you feel, just for a moment, how precious and how brief this whole adventure is. And here is where all of tonight's teachings come together, very gently. The river flows, and we flow with it. The cup is already broken, and that makes it precious. The garden is open, if we keep walking. The kitchen worker says wonderful and means it. And beneath all of it, beneath the river and the cup and the garden and the kitchen, beneath everything that moves and changes and comes and goes, there is a stillness, a depth, an awareness as wide and quiet as the floor of the ocean. You do not need to choose between the surface and the deep. You do not need to stop feeling in order to be at peace. You can love the waves and rest in the stillness. You can hold the cup and know it will break. You can ride the winds of life, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and silence, and all the while feel the steady, unshakable ground of awareness beneath your feet. This is what the old teachers meant when they spoke of peace. Not the absence of change, but the presence of something that does not need to change. Something that simply is. Something that has always been here, quiet and patient, waiting for you to notice. So tonight, as you rest here, you might imagine yourself settling down through the layers. Let the surface thoughts drift by. Let the day's worries float on top like leaves on water. You do not need to push them away. You do not need to engage with them. Just let them be, and feel yourself sinking gently, slowly, into the deeper water, into the stillness that has been there all along, waiting for you, patient and calm and wide as the ocean floor. The winds of life will keep blowing. They always do. But you do not have to be the small boat anymore. You can be the ocean. Vast, deep, undisturbed at the core, holding everything calmly in the great embrace of awareness. Let us settle here. Feel the stillness beneath everything. You do not need to go anywhere. The deep water is already where you are. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a truth about peace that is easy to miss, and it is this: peace alone is not enough. That might sound strange, especially after everything we have been exploring together tonight. We have talked about stillness, about the deep ocean, about resting in awareness. And all of that is real, and all of that matters. But the Buddhist teachers were very clear that peace, by itself, can become something cold, something removed, something that watches the world from a distance and says, "This does not concern me." And that is not what the old teachers meant at all. They said that a truly awake life has two wings, like a bird. The first wing is peace, equanimity, the stillness we have been learning about. And the second wing is compassion, the open heart that feels the world and responds with kindness. You need both wings to fly. With only one, you go in circles. Let us explore a story about a teacher who understood this better than almost anyone. He was an old man by the time most people came to know him. He had spent decades in study and contemplation, and he had a deep, quiet presence about him. But what people remembered most about him was not his wisdom. It was something simpler than that. It was the way he loved. People would come to see him from far away, carrying all kinds of burdens. Some were confused. Some were sad. Some were tangled up in problems they could not see their way out of. And when they sat down with him, expecting perhaps a lecture or a teaching or a set of instructions, what they received instead was something they had not expected. He simply loved them. Not in a dramatic way. Not with grand gestures or emotional speeches. He would look at them, really look at them, with those bright, quiet eyes, and they could feel it. A warmth, a steadiness, a complete and total acceptance of who they were, right then and there, with all their mess and confusion and imperfection. One student said to him once, "Teacher, how do you manage to love everyone? Some of the people who come to you are so difficult." The old man laughed, a warm, easy laugh. "I do not see difficult people," he said. "I see people who are having a difficult time. That is a very different thing." The student thought about this. "But what about their problems? Do you not want to fix them?" "Oh no," the teacher said. "That is not my job. My job is to love them. The love will do whatever needs to be done. I just stay out of its way." There was something in the way he said this that was both very simple and very deep. He was not pretending that people's struggles did not exist. He saw them clearly, but he did not get tangled up in the drama of it. He did not take on their suffering as his own. He simply held them in a kind of warm, steady light, the way the sun holds everything it touches, without choosing favorites, without asking anything in return. And almost everyone who spent time with him left feeling lighter. Not because he had solved their problems, but because, for a little while, they had been in the presence of someone who was truly at peace and truly kind at the same time. And that combination, that peace and that kindness together, was like medicine for the heart. There is a small moment from one of his gatherings that captures this perfectly. A group of students had come to spend a week with him, and whenever someone shared something from their life, something honest and real, whether it was joyful or painful or confusing, the old teacher would listen very carefully. He would lean forward slightly. His whole body would become still, as if there were nothing else in the world except this person, this moment, this voice. And when they finished, he would look at them, and his eyes would be shining, and he would say just two words, "How beautiful." Not, "I am sorry," or "That is terrible," or "Here is what you should do." Just, "How beautiful." As if the very act of a human being telling the truth about their life, any truth, was something sacred and worthy of wonder. At first, some of the students were confused by this. How could everything be beautiful? But slowly, they began to understand. He was not saying that their circumstances were beautiful. He was saying that they were beautiful. Their honesty, their courage, their willingness to be real. And hearing that, being seen that way, changed something in them. It reminded them that underneath whatever they were going through, they were still whole, still worthy of love. The Buddhist tradition makes a careful distinction between compassion and what they call its near enemy. The near enemy of compassion is pity. And pity, though it looks like compassion from the outside, is actually quite different. Pity says, "Oh, you poor thing." It looks down. It separates. It places you above the person you are feeling sorry for. And in doing so, it creates a distance between you. Compassion says something else entirely. Compassion says, "I see you. I am with you. We are in this together." It does not look down. It looks across. It meets the other person exactly where they are, as an equal, as a fellow traveler on this mysterious road. The Buddha said, "Have compassion for all beings, rich and poor alike. Each has their suffering, not just the ones who look like they need help, not just the ones whose struggles are visible. Everyone. Because everyone, no matter how their life looks from the outside, is carrying something. Everyone is doing their best with what they have. And when you see this, truly see it, something in your heart softens. Not into weakness, into tenderness. And tenderness, it turns out, is one of the strongest things in the world. Let us explore a small teaching about perception that sheds light on why this kind of compassion matters. There is an old classroom exercise that has been passed down through generations of teachers. It goes like this. A teacher sets out 3 bowls of water in a row. The bowl on the left holds water that is quite warm. The bowl on the right holds water that is very cool. And the bowl in the middle holds water that is somewhere in between, just ordinary room temperature. The teacher invites a student to come forward and place one hand in the warm bowl and one hand in the cool bowl, and to hold them there for a little while. After a minute or so, the teacher says, "Now place both hands into the middle bowl." And what happens is always the same. The student's face changes, because the hand that was in the warm bowl now feels the middle water as cool, and the hand that was in the cool bowl feels the very same water as warm. The same bowl, the same water, but 2 completely different experiences, depending on where you have just come from. It is such a simple thing, and yet it says something very profound about the way we move through the world. We think our experience of things is solid. We think that when we feel something strongly, when we have a strong opinion or a strong reaction, that we are seeing the truth. But this little exercise reminds us, gently, that our perceptions are always shaped by where we have been, by what we have already experienced, by the particular bowl our hand was resting in just a moment ago. And when you understand this, really understand it, something beautiful happens. You become more patient, more forgiving, more willing to hear someone else's experience without insisting that yours is the only real one. Because you know, from your own 2 hands, that the same water can feel completely different depending on where you are coming from. This is the ground that true compassion grows from. Not from trying to be a good person, not from forcing yourself to care, but from the simple recognition that everyone is standing in a different bowl. Everyone is feeling the water differently, and no one is wrong. Think of a time when someone close to you reacted to something in a way that surprised you. Perhaps they were upset about something that seemed small to you. Perhaps they were calm about something that would have rattled you deeply. And in that moment, it would have been easy to think, why are they being like that? But the bowl teaches us something gentler. It teaches us to wonder, instead, what bowl were they standing in before this? What have they been through today, this week, this year, that makes them feel the water the way they do? And when you wonder that way, something shifts. Judgment softens into curiosity. Frustration melts into understanding. And understanding, gently, quietly, becomes love. There is a teaching attributed to one of the great modern Buddhist teachers that goes like this: if you have inner peace, the external problems will not affect your deep sense of peace and tranquility. But with that peace, you look out at the world, and you cannot turn away from what you see. This is the heart of the two wings. The peace does not close your eyes. It opens them. When you are no longer drowning in your own worry, your own reactivity, your own small storms, you begin to see clearly. You see the people around you. You see what they are going through. You feel their joys and their struggles. And because you are at peace, you can actually be there for them. Not from a place of panic or obligation, but from a place of genuine, steady, open-hearted care. This is what the old teacher knew, the one who simply loved everyone. He could love so freely because he was not afraid. He was not afraid of other people's pain because he had found his own peace. And from that peace, the love flowed out naturally, like water flowing downhill. He did not have to force it. He did not have to try. He just had to be still enough and open enough, and the love took care of the rest. And perhaps, as you rest here tonight, you can feel both wings. The wing of peace, which is the stillness you have been sinking into all evening, and the wing of compassion, which is the warmth in your chest, the quiet care you feel for the people in your life, for the world, for yourself. Because compassion includes yourself too. That is something we often forget. The same tenderness you would offer to a friend, the same patience, the same forgiveness is available for you. You are also doing your best with what you have. You are also standing in your own particular bowl of water, feeling it the only way you can. And that is enough. You are enough. The Buddha said, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Let that settle in, not as a command, just as a gentle reminder, like a hand resting on your shoulder. You deserve your own kindness. Let us rest here softly. Feel the warmth of your own breathing, the peace and the kindness, both together, like two wings holding you aloft. And when you are ready, we will continue together. You may have noticed something about water that is perfectly still. When the surface is calm, when there is no wind and no disturbance, the water becomes a mirror. Trees appear in it, upside down but perfect. The sky appears. Clouds drift across the surface. And if you stand at the edge and look down, you see your own face looking back at you, clear and true. But the moment the surface is disturbed, even slightly, the image breaks apart. The trees blur. The sky fragments. Your own reflection wobbles and stretches into something unrecognizable. The water is still water. But when it is moving, it cannot show you anything clearly. A poet once wrote, We can make our minds so like still water that beings gather around us, that they may see their own images, and so live for a moment with a clearer, perhaps even a fiercer life, because of our quiet. There is so much in those words. Let us stay with them for a while. What does it mean to become still water for another person? It does not mean becoming blank. It does not mean becoming passive or empty or withdrawn. It means becoming so settled, so present, so quietly at ease, that the people around you begin to see themselves more clearly. Not because you are telling them anything, not because you are fixing or advising or analyzing, but because in the presence of your stillness, the noise in their own minds begins to calm down. And when the noise calms, they can see. They can see themselves. They can see their situation. They can see what matters. You have probably been in the presence of someone like this. Maybe a grandparent, maybe a friend, maybe a teacher or a neighbor, or someone you sat next to on a long journey. Someone who did not need to fill every silence with words. Someone who was simply, quietly, there. And in their presence, you felt something shift. Your shoulders dropped. Your breathing slowed. Your thoughts, which had been spinning in tight circles, began to loosen and drift apart. And underneath all that spinning, you found something you had been looking for without knowing it. Clarity, calm, a sense that things might, after all, be okay. That person was being still water for you, and they probably did not even know they were doing it. Let us explore a story about this. In a small town, there was a woman who kept a tea house. It was nothing fancy. A few low tables, some cushions on the floor, a shelf of teas in clay jars, and a window that looked out onto a garden. She had run the tea house for many years, and people came not just for the tea, though the tea was very good, but for something else they could not quite name. When you sat down in her tea house, something happened to you. The room was quiet, but it was not the quiet of an empty place. It was the quiet of a place that was deeply inhabited. The woman would bring your tea without hurry. She would pour it carefully, watching the stream of golden liquid fill the cup. She might say a word or two. She might not. And somehow, in that unhurried space, the thing that had been bothering you all day, the knot in your stomach, the loop in your mind, would begin to untangle. People would come in restless and leave rested. They would come in confused and leave with a strange sense of knowing, not that they had figured anything out, but that the figuring was not as urgent as they had thought. One regular visitor said, "I do not know what she does. She just pours tea. But I always leave feeling like I have been put back together." Another visitor, a young man who had been coming for several months, once tried to thank her for helping him through a difficult time. "You helped me so much," he said. "I do not know how to repay you." The tea house keeper looked at him with gentle surprise. "I did not do anything," she said. "That is exactly what helped," he said. And they both laughed softly, because it was true. She had not done anything. She had not given advice. She had not offered solutions. She had simply been present. She had poured tea. She had sat with him in the quiet, and in that quiet he had found his own way through. This is what happens when someone trusts the space between words. When they do not rush to fill the silence. When they allow the other person room to breathe, room to think, room to feel whatever they are feeling without the pressure of being fixed or explained. The silence itself becomes a kind of conversation, a kind of care. What the tea house keeper had learned through years of her own quiet sitting and her own patient practice, was something the Buddhist teachers point to again and again. That presence itself is a kind of gift. Not doing, not solving, not even understanding. Just being fully, completely present with another person, without agenda, without judgment, without the need to make anything happen. That alone can be enough to change someone's day. Sometimes it can change their life. There is a teaching in the Buddhist tradition about the way things naturally open and close. The breath opens and closes. The lungs expand and contract. The heart beats open and beats closed, over and over, all day and all night, without you needing to think about it. Even the mind, if you watch it closely, opens and closes. Sometimes it is wide and receptive, taking everything in. Sometimes it narrows and tightens, focused or guarded or afraid. And the teaching says, this is natural. This is not a problem to solve. The opening and closing is the rhythm of being alive. You do not need to force your heart to stay open all the time. That would be exhausting, and it would not be true to the way life actually works. What you can do is notice the rhythm. Notice when you are open. Notice when you are closed. And trust that the closing is not permanent. That the heart, like the breath, will open again on its own, in its own time, if you let it. This is such a kind teaching, because so many of us are hard on ourselves about the closing. We think, I should be more open. I should be more loving. I should not feel this tightness, this guardedness, this small, contracted feeling. But the old teachers say, gently, it is all right. Even the flowers close at night. Even the trees pull their energy inward in the winter, and they open again in the spring. This is not failure. It is rhythm. It is life, doing what life does. You can feel this rhythm in your own body right now, if you pay attention. The breath comes in, and something opens. The breath goes out, and something gently releases. In, out, open, close. The most natural thing in the world. And your heart does the same. Your moods do the same. Your energy, your attention, your willingness to engage with the world, all of it pulses. All of it breathes. And knowing this, truly knowing it, is one of the kindest things you can know, because it means that the closed moments are not mistakes. They are simply the exhale, making room for the next inhale. And when you trust this rhythm, something surprising happens. You become gentler, not just with yourself, but with everyone around you. Because you begin to see that other people are also opening and closing all the time in their own rhythms. The friend who was warm yesterday and distant today is not being unkind. They are closing the way a flower closes, and they will open again. The family member who seems guarded at dinner is not rejecting you. They are resting in their own temporary winter. And spring will come. When you see people this way, with the eyes of someone who understands the rhythm, you become still water for them. You become the quiet surface that does not demand anything. That does not say, you should be open right now. That simply says, I am here. Take your time. I will be here when you are ready. There is an old Zen saying, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. We heard this earlier in our journey tonight, and it returns now with a slightly different meaning. Because it is not only about your own spring, it is about the spring of everyone around you. When you sit quietly, when you become still water, you create the conditions for other people to bloom. Not by pulling their petals open, not by shining a bright light on them and saying, "Grow," but by being the quiet, patient ground in which growing becomes possible. There is one more thing worth saying about still water, and it is perhaps the most important thing of all. The reflection that appears in still water is not something the water creates. The water does not paint the trees or arrange the clouds or design your face. It simply reflects what is already there, clearly, honestly, without distortion. And this is what the most peaceful people do for the rest of us. They do not give us something new. They show us what was already there, inside us, all along. The goodness that we had forgotten, the strength that we had overlooked, the beauty that we had stopped seeing because we were too busy, too distracted, too caught up in the ripples on the surface. Think of a child who runs to a parent after a fall. The child is crying, frightened, convinced that something terrible has happened. And the parent kneels down, holds them gently, and simply breathes. Does not panic, does not fuss, just holds them calmly, warmly, steadily. And within a minute or two, the child's breathing slows. The crying softens. The fear dissolves. Not because the parent did anything remarkable, but because the parent's stillness became a mirror in which the child could see that they were safe, that they were whole, that nothing was truly broken. We never outgrow the need for this. No matter how old we are, no matter how capable, there are moments when we need someone to be still water for us, to hold us in their calm, to reflect back to us the wholeness we have temporarily forgotten. And there are moments when we are called to be that stillness for someone else, not through effort or expertise, just through presence, just through the quiet gift of being at peace. When the mind becomes still, said an ancient teacher, and tranquil, neither seeking nor expecting anything, then it is possible to see what is true. And what is true, when you see it clearly, is almost always more beautiful than you expected. You do not have to become a different person to be this kind of presence in the world. You do not have to become more spiritual or more wise or more accomplished. You just have to become a little more still, a little more present, a little more willing to sit quietly and let the water settle. And when it does, the people around you will begin to see their own reflections. And those reflections, seen clearly, will remind them of who they really are. This, in the end, may be the most generous thing you can offer anyone. Not your advice, not your solutions, not your brilliance, just your stillness, just your peace, just the quiet, steady surface of a heart that has learned to rest. Let us settle here like still water. No movement needed, no effort, just the gentle, quiet clarity of being exactly where you are. And when you are ready, we will continue together for one last time. We have come a long way together tonight. We began with a river and a single drop of water falling through the air. We sat with an old monk and his broken cup. We walked along a tall wall and found a garden that was open all along. We heard the word wonderful spoken from the heart of an ordinary life. We sank beneath the waves to the stillness at the bottom of the ocean. We felt two wings, peace and compassion, holding us aloft. And we became still water, clear enough to reflect the world. And now, as the evening grows quieter, there is one more thing to explore. Something very simple. Something you already know, even if you have never put it into words. The seasons turn. If you have lived long enough to watch a garden through a full year, you know what this means. In spring, the first green shoots push up through soil that looked, just weeks before, as though nothing could ever grow in it again. In summer, everything is full and lush and almost too alive, buzzing with insects and heavy with fruit. In autumn, the colors deepen and the leaves begin to fall, and there is a beauty in the letting go that is different from the beauty of the growing. And in winter, everything rests. The ground is bare. The branches are empty. And if you did not know better, you might think it was all over. But it is not over. It is never over. Beneath the surface, in the dark, quiet soil, the roots are alive. The seeds are waiting. The life is there, resting, gathering strength for the next spring. And the next spring always comes. Your life has seasons too. You have had your springs, those times of new beginning, when everything felt fresh and possible and full of promise. You have had your summers, when life was rich and busy and full. You have had your autumns, when things you loved began to change, when you had to let go of something before you were ready. And you have had your winters, those quiet, bare times when it felt like nothing was happening, when you wondered if the growing was finished. But it was not finished. It is never finished. The seasons turn. And whatever season you are in right now, tonight, it is exactly the right one. It is doing exactly what it needs to do. And the next one is already on its way, quietly, patiently, in its own good time. And if you are lucky enough to have lived through a few full turnings, you begin to see the seasons, not just in your own life, but in the lives of those around you. You watch young people setting out on journeys you once took yourself. You watch old friends settling into the quieter rhythms that come later. You see weddings and new homes and first steps and last chapters, and you feel the great wheel turning, gently, steadily, carrying everyone forward. And there is something beautiful about watching this from a place of stillness. Not from a place of clinging, wishing you could go back, or rushing forward, wishing you could skip ahead, but from right here, seeing it all with clear, tender eyes, feeling the ache and the sweetness of it mixed together the way they always are, and bowing to it, quietly, gratefully, as if to say, yes, this is life, and it is good. There is a teaching in the Buddhist tradition that comes as a surprise to many people when they first hear it. It is about a word that is often misunderstood. The word is nirvana. Most people, when they hear this word, imagine something far away, a distant mountaintop, a state of perfection achieved after years of heroic effort, a place you go to when you have finally gotten everything right. But the old teachers said something quite different. They said that nirvana is not a place you go to. It is something you discover right where you are. And the way you discover it is beautifully simple. One old Zen master put it this way: when you realize the fact that everything changes and you find your composure in it, you find yourself in nirvana. That is all. Not escaping from change, not transcending it, not conquering it, just finding your composure in it. Just saying, yes, the seasons turn, and I am at peace with the turning. Yes, things come and go, and I can rest in the coming and the going. Yes, this moment is brief and beautiful and unrepeatable, and I am here for it, fully, gratefully, with my whole heart. That is nirvana, not somewhere else. Right here, in this breath, in this room, in this quiet, ordinary, extraordinary moment. You have probably tasted this already, even if you did not know the word for it. Perhaps it came on an evening when you were sitting outside as the day ended, watching the light change, feeling the air cool, hearing the birds settle into the trees for the night. And for just a moment, you were not wishing for anything. You were not regretting anything. You were simply there, present, at ease, held by the evening. And it was enough. It was completely, perfectly enough. That was composure. That was the turning of the season being met, gently, by a heart that was willing to turn with it. And it did not require years of training or a journey to a distant land. It only required you being still, being open, being here. There is an old saying in the contemplative traditions: you cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And perhaps that is the simplest way to say what all these teachings are pointing toward. Not stopping the change, not controlling the weather, just finding your balance within it, just learning to ride the swell with a kind of easy grace, trusting that the ocean knows what it is doing, even when you do not. The Buddha once said something to his students that has stayed with people for thousands of years. He said, "If it were not possible for you to live with a compassionate and peaceful heart, I would not ask you to do so. But because it is possible, I offer you these teachings." There is such kindness in those words. He is not saying, you must become perfect. He is not saying, you must try harder. He is saying, you already have what you need. The capacity for peace is already in you. The capacity for compassion is already in you. It has always been in you. All I am doing is reminding you that it is there. And this is what the whole of tonight has really been about. Not acquiring something new, not becoming someone different, but remembering the river you are part of, remembering the stillness beneath the waves, remembering the open heart that has been with you since the very beginning, patient and ready, waiting for you to turn toward it. The seasons will continue to turn. That is their nature. There will be springs you did not expect and winters you did not plan for. There will be moments of astonishing beauty and moments of quiet difficulty. The cup will break. The river will flow. The garden will open and close and open again. And through all of it, you can carry with you the simple teachings we have shared tonight. That you are part of something much larger than your worries. That impermanence is not the enemy of beauty, but the very thing that makes beauty possible. That patience reveals openings that force cannot find. That the present moment, when you arrive for it, is always more than enough. That beneath the waves, there is a stillness that nothing can disturb. That peace and compassion belong together, like two wings of a single bird. That your stillness is a gift to everyone around you. And that the seasons turn, always, toward new life. The Buddha said, thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. You are that candle tonight. Quiet, steady, glowing, and the light you carry does not run out. It only grows the more you share it. Let us rest here one last time. The journey is complete. The seasons will keep turning gently, faithfully, in their own good time. And you are held, as you have always been, by the great river of life itself. Take one soft breath and let it go. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your quiet attention, for your open heart, for your willingness to simply listen and let the words find their place. We have traveled a long and gentle road together, from the waterfall to the broken cup, from the garden beyond the wall to a kitchen where a single word became a kind of prayer, from the depths of the ocean to the stillness of water so calm it could hold the reflection of the whole world. And through it all, one simple thread, that life is always flowing, always changing, always turning, and that the peace you are looking for is not waiting for you somewhere else. It is here. It has always been here. In the breath, in the stillness, in the tender, courageous act of showing up for your own life, just as it is. You do not need to hold on to anything from tonight. Whatever was meant for you has already landed, softly, on your heart. And in its own time, it will fall in. So let the evening carry you now. Let the quiet do its gentle work. Let your body rest, and your mind rest, and your heart rest. You have done enough today. You have been enough today. And tomorrow, the seasons will turn again, and you will meet them as you always do, with whatever grace and goodness you have, which is more than you know. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.